if y'all see us dancing a little bit when we come on video, it's because this little background music we have. I just love it. It gets me in the groove for our pep talk. Are y'all ready for our pep talk today? All right. Today we are talking about the 7 information management questions every business owner should answer. So whether you are running a team of 50 or a business of 1, the challenge is the same. Workload keeps growing, but your capacity doesn't. Even solopreneurs feel the impact of information management, misplaced passwords, email threads you can't find again, scattered project notes, unclear contracts, and time wasted creating things that you already solved once. So welcome to this episode of PEPTalk Productive Environment Podcast, where we will share the 7 information management questions every business owner should answer. I don't like using the word should, but must, needs to, I don't know, but should. I think we'll just stick with should for now. Should answer. And I'm Andrea Anderson, CEO of Productive Environment Institute. I am here in Carolina Beach, North Carolina, and I am joined by...
I'm Barbara Hemphill, founder of Productive Environment Institute in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Awesome. And we are thrilled to have you guys with us. So I'm going to just get rid of that image and pull up the real us, and we're going to have a conversation. So as you guys know, depending on how old you are, us women of a certain age, the computer has made it easier than ever to create information, right? And just as easy to create a mess. Inefficient information management leads to stress, wasted time, delayed client work, and lost revenue. So it's not a matter of if an information meltdown will happen, but when, unless you put simple systems in place now. And you guys know, if you're familiar with us, you know we are all about systems. And an acronym for that is saving you space, time, energy, and money. System. So look, that was quick, Eds. Thank you. Eds is our little angel in the outfield.
Just blows me away how she pulls that up.
How quickly she pulls it up. Before I jump in and we start talking about I'm going to read each of the 7, and you guys might want to take notes on this as well. But I would just want to have Barbara do a little introduction. So Barbara, when you came up with these, I think it was 6 at first, and then we added the 7th.
Right.
Much like our Magic 7 used to be Magic 6. There was an additional one.
We flipped it
around. Yeah. But you created this, and you've used this for decades, really, with companies, businesses that have multiple employees, multiple staff, companies. And so, but it also applies to the individual solopreneur. So we're going to talk about a little bit about both. But Barbara, can you share, if you recall, where these questions came from? Like, were you sitting in an office with somebody and you just, how did these 7 information management questions evolve?
It was in preparing a presentation for a company. So it was taming the paper tiger. It was back when we were talking about taming the paper tiger. This information had nothing to do with digital information. When it was first begun, just like our art started out, the art of organizing started out just with paper. This started out just with paper as well. And I was doing a presentation, and I wanted a handout to give the audience members something to go back that they could actually work with. And that's where it started. And I just want to add something here too. You, Andrea, you've mentioned that it's for business owners. Actually, it's even for families. Because when you talk about sharing, we've talked about so often, if something happens to you and you're not available and people have to find the information. So it literally applies to everybody. I don't care, because we all have information. We've said many times, as long as you are breathing, information is going to be coming into you, and finding that information is really critical.
Yeah, such a good point. And we have a lot of clients that, as I mentioned, of a certain age, who are also, they may be running a business, maybe running a home, but they're also caregiving for aging parents. That in and of itself is, in fact, I love Karen Lynch, one of our specialists. She says, when she was taking care of her father before he passed, she said she was the CEO of her father's life. So this is perfect for anyone who has to manage information, right? So let's go into the first one. The first question is, what information do you need to keep? So whether it's the company, whether it's you're the solopreneur, and so it's so we used to say, what information do we need to keep? But it may just be, what information do I need to keep at this point, or what information do you need to keep? So you can start. I'll share a few things, and then Barbara, if you'll chime in. You know, as a business owner, you want to start with your missions and goals, your mission and goals, right? So what business are you in? That's a good place to start. And what information is essential to operate, serve clients, and grow, right? So if it's active information, things that you need to move forward, then that's clearly information you need to keep. And for teams, this helps organize shared knowledge. Answering that question, what information do we as a team need to keep? For solopreneurs, this clarifies the difference between what we could keep and what we should keep. And I know, Barbara, in companies, there are legal issues with keeping information. There are records retention. So if you're in a large company, there may be records retention guidelines. So can you chime in on that, and then also how that would impact a solopreneur who maybe not have their own records retention guidelines?
Well, I think for the purposes of the conversation today, I mean, this is something literally you could talk about for days, because it's really very complicated. So I want to make sure that on this call, we help people get started. And, one of the PEI principles is today's mail is tomorrow's pile. And that actually applies here, because it's like just the question of what information do you need to keep is a huge question. Huge.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing to start with is figuring out, first of all, where you're going to keep this information, but then it's getting started. So if you're a business owner, for example, the first thing that comes to mind is your client information. I mean, that's critical, right? And so then your vendor information and, your passwords, and what are the things that so to begin with this, if you just literally created a form or something somewhere, so that every time you went to do a work, you think, okay, this is something I need to have, you'd have that list. And those of you who are scoreboard users, you'd know exactly what to do with that. I mean, you'd have this as be a project, and you would start it as a project. So I think that's the really critical here, is I want to get people to get started and not let it feel so overwhelming that we never get around to doing it.
That's right. That's right. So discovering what information you need to keep, and Barbara gave some great examples there, and you may add to that list. You may add to that list as you continue working. The next question is, in what form? In what form? So only a small percentage of paper documents are worth digitizing, but choosing the right format matters for everyone, right? So for companies, that might be electronic storage, because it reduces printing, copying, and physical storage costs. It also allows for sharing information. So if you're in a company, you want to share then it really needs to be electronic, right? For solopreneurs, digital storage keeps your office from becoming a paper dump that you have to sort alone. Maybe too late for that, right? That's why we're here. It makes travel, delegation, and client work easier. So if you decide, there are certain documents that you may have in paper form now that you may think, oh, I may need to be able to access this when I'm traveling. So then you want to digitize it. Doesn't mean you need to digitize everything. Okay. And one of our principles with the productive environment finding system is to help you be able to find anything you file in your physical filing cabinet as quickly and easily as you can find it online or on your computer with the power of search. So Barbara, way back in 2005, when I first took your training, I had to speak at my local BNI group, and I coined the phrase at that time, and then trademarked it at that time, almost paperless. So that was 20 years ago, almost paperless. And that remains the sweet spot, using paper for what paper does best, right? It could just be quick capture, signatures, planning, lots of different types of documents, and then electronic tools for what they do best: storage, search, backups, things like that. Now, 20 years later, we have a lot more that is electronic than we had paper. But for those of you watching that still have a lot of paper, what I don't want you to do is think, oh, I'll just scan everything. There's a process that we can help you decide what is worth being scanned and what is okay to just keep as paper, but for you to be able to finding what you need when you need it. Now, with that said, there's a whole, Barbara, you said we could actually have a whole day on each of these 7. So we could do 7 days. But with that question, when we talk about digitizing, I mean, my goodness, the places you have your own hard drive. If you have a laptop, you've got so many cloud storage systems, Google Drive, Dropbox. You could have shared drives within your company. There are so many tools that are available to you. So, that's the question is, when we say in what form, the additional thing on there is in what program, like where. So I know, Barbara, you said you're in the process of doing what I did. I think I did this 2 years ago, where I said I needed to make a decision. I wanted to access things on my computer, but I also wanted to be able to access them in the cloud so I can find, access them anywhere. You're going through that project right now, making those decisions. And when I started that, this may be you and this may be some of you listening, I had things everywhere. I had them on my computer, iPad, all the examples I just gave, Google Drive, Dropbox. There was another one. Oh, Apple, the iCloud. I mean, I had things all over. And I was like, okay. So I had some decisions to make as far as where I was going to keep things. And then also how are you going to remember which, if you decide to keep multiple places, then how do you know what's where? And again, that's where the SOAR comes in. But anyway, these are just things to be thinking about. Anything to add to that, Barbara? In what form?
Well, one of the things is that we use the term capture quest. So what you need to do is a capture quest for all the platforms. So in what form, one of the first things that you could do would be sit down and say, okay, where are all the places that I have information right now? I mean, a lot of people use their texts as information. I know somebody sent me that and I can look it up in text. And you have you may be using Telegram, you may be using WhatsApp, you may have your own CRM, and some of it's in the CRM and some of it's in your email. So the very first step for you to do is to say, what are all the places that I have digital information collected? And I'm actually doing a thing with a company where we're doing this as a group. The group is going to all get together and break into teams, and they're going to address these issues so that they can do today's mail is tomorrow's pile and stop the problem and start over. So in what form, in what platform, and that's where you start, is to do that. You're only going to be putting Band-Aids if you don't identify where all the things that information is currently stored.
Exactly. So what information do you need to keep is number one, in what form, and then for how long. So companies often keep everything just in case. Solopreneurs do the same thing, except they blame themselves later when files pile up. So retention rules aren't only for big business. They protect you too. So you can come up with your own retention rules. And these would not be for everything, but some examples of things you might want to have your own retention policy for would be client contracts, if you're a business owner, tax documents, receipts, project files, email history, version control, things like that. And Barbara, you have a story to this next point. Keeping too much creates a different risk, retrieving the wrong or outdated version. And I believe you had an example of a company that they were penalized because they kept something that should have been destroyed years before. right?
Yeah, it was literally a company where it was again, lots of paper left up that they had left over. And I encouraged them to do a clean out day where they would clean out what they needed. And they basically said, oh, we can't afford it because, and they said it was not billable time, because in this company, every employee marked all their time as billed to a particular client. Well, there was no way that they could bill that to a particular client. And so they chose not to do it. I stayed in touch with the company with some employees that I knew that worked there. And a couple of years later, there was a lawsuit, and the processing, all the files were subpoenaed. And they found a contract in it that had never been signed, but the prosecuting attorney was able to use that unsigned contract as something to do with intent. And as a result, they had to pay a fine, something in excess of $200,000.
Wow.
And I refrained from saying it would have been a lot cheaper to have spent a day, because they could have really accomplished a huge lot. And of course, one of the things that we recommend with companies is that every company, and a solopreneur can do the same thing, that you should one day a year have a day when you clean out the stuff that you know you don't need, and to protect yourself from that kind of risk.
Amen. So cleaning out files fails, company or solopreneur, when we don't have clear criteria for what stays and what goes. Your system needs rules, not feelings. So just keep that in mind. So let me recap. Number 1, what information do you need to keep? Number 2, in what form? Number 3, for how long? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say number 4? That was number 3, for how long? And number 4, who is responsible for filing it? So for companies, that's where, Barbara, you say the originator's rule is simple. Whoever creates a document is responsible for where it lives, right? And then for solopreneurs, the rule becomes, if you created it, you must give it a home immediately, not someday. Someday is how piles form. And I know that in my working with my digital system, where if I'm creating things quickly, then they're just sitting there. I call them orphans, because they don't have a home. They're files that are just sitting there. And I have to be intentional about where to put them. Like, okay, I just created this document. First of all, does it go in my action, in my list of projects, or does it go in my reference files? And then within each of those are other categories. But it takes seconds to do. But when we don't do it, it piles up, and then it becomes a big clean out. So that's for you if you're a solopreneur. But for companies, the originator's rule, whoever and I think, Barbara, did you come up with that, or is that something that was existing?
I think it's mine. I've been using it for years. I don't know.
Yeah.
I never heard it from anybody else. It was just something that I experienced, because I would be working with groups of people within a company. And because, one of the things I've worked on is getting people to talk about how they're sharing information. Well, if they weren't doing that, then it's like, well, I don't know if he's keeping it or if she's keeping it, so I'm going to keep it. And then as a result, you ended up
with multiples,
not knowing where the document really is, which is the most recent document and all that. So that was just a way that I came up with it. I don't know that it's appropriate in every case, but it certainly helps in many, many cases as being a way of doing it. You may say under certain documents, somebody may start it, especially now that we're using AI, there are going to be many times when an individual is going to start something, then they're going to use AI, and it's going to, so who's the stakeholder, I guess, would be another way to look at that. So instead of who's responsible for filing it, it's who's the stakeholder.
Yeah. And if you are a solopreneur, but you add a VA, a virtual assistant, or a contractor, or a bookkeeper, or an assistant, even a physical assistant, this rule becomes even more important. Like, who is responsible, right? And who's this, like you said, who's the stakeholder? And then number 5, who needs access to it? We talk about this a lot with our SOAR board. Who needs access to it? To it being an individual document, or a folder, or a whole bunch of stuff, right? So for teams, this is about security and permissions. So with our store board, we can give people certain permissions to certain parts of information, or we can give them access to everything. So for teams in a company, you may have a marketing team and a sales team, and they have access to different information. They have different permissions. So that's something that in a company you want to be aware of. For solopreneurs, it's about protecting yourself and preparing for support. And also, we're talking about who needs access to it in a family. Like, to your point, Barbara, about families. Like we have SOAR members who are creating, who are adding information to their SOAR board, with knowing in mind who needs access to that, like a family member, a case of emergency, things like that. And so that's what you want to ask yourself. So ask, does my VA need access? Does my bookkeeper, does my attorney or accountant, I love this one. Does future me know where it is stored, where this information is stored? And if we're using our search capability, then that helps your future me. Absolutely. So digital systems allow controlled access, and solopreneurs often overlook this until there's a crisis. So that's something you could be thinking about as you're putting these rules or these questions in practice in your own business. So let me just do this again. Number 1, what information do you need to keep? Number 2, in what form? Number 3, for how long? Number 4, who is responsible for filing it? And number 5, who needs access to it? Now, number 6 is one of my favorites.
I just want to, you're bringing up so many things. I just have to put in a couple of things. One, you mentioned the orphan, which I love that little explain, because the old saying about a place for everything and everything misplaced. We always say, for years, I've joked that that's a lie, a place for everything and everything misplaced, because life is just messy. But with digital information, not having it, I mean, if it's something physical, you can finally get it. But if it's digital and you've left it as an orphan, there's a very good chance you're not going to find it. We often say that people thought that scanning information was going to solve their information problem, but we learned it just made it a bigger, faster, hidden mess. So the thing of it is needing to have a place so that it's not an orphan very long. So, and I think for most people, a week is like the absolute longest that you could possibly remember what that was going to be, for most people. So that's where the habits get in effect. And and then the other thing I wanted to mention is who needs access to it. It has to do with passwords. I can't even, we were watching a TV show yesterday. It was a crime show, and they went into the same, and they were looking for the password for the computer there. And one of the guys says, lift up the keyboard and look under there. That's where I keep mine. Sure enough, they did. When I went into companies, I saw that hundreds of times where I can't tell you the numbers of times. It was a Post-it note under the keyboard or someplace like that. I am a huge fan of password managers. There are so many ways that you can do it. And from a security standpoint, and with password managers, many of them, I don't know if you can with all of them, but many of them, what I love is that, for example, if you have a virtual assistant or you have a new employee or somebody that you really haven't built trust with yet, you can actually share login information without them knowing what it actually is. You're giving it to them and they can plug it in. So that's a real safekeeping. So who needs access to it is something to think about. And passwords is one of those things that I think people are way too careless.
I agree. And you can revoke access. So that's one of the things with Barbara, you and I were talking about that in chat. We were chatting about that in Telegram this morning about giving someone access to certain areas of your store board. And one of the ways to do it is to add their email address and invite them in to just a certain place in your store board, not everything. You can do that, or you can just send them a link and they can click it and access what you're giving them access to. And I personally like putting in their email address and inviting them, because then later I can revoke that. I can remove that access. So let's say you have somebody that's just a temporary working with you on a particular project, but then they're gone. You can go back in and remove their access. So things like that, you want to start thinking about even, and again, it could work with family members too. Certain people have certain access to certain things. So, all right, number 6, which is my favorite. How can you find it? I can say that's our favorite. How can you find it? So whether you are one person or 50 people, the principles are the same. So file management means what is filed, right? File mechanics, where and how it's filed. And file maintenance, when is it eliminated? How long do you keep it, right? That was one of the questions. If any of those 3 pieces are weak, you pay the price in frustration and wasted time. So this is where the ART framework comes in. We talk about the art of organizing information. ART stands for action, reference, toss. That's when it becomes your best friend, when you are deciding, first of all, is it something that you need to keep at all? And if so, is it something that's active? It's a current project. That's the A. Or is it reference, something you just want to keep for future reference? Or can you just go ahead and toss it? So it limits the decision-making burden and keeps everything findable. If you go through steps 1 through 5 and go to all the trouble to answer those questions and start putting things in place, but you don't create a way to find the information when you need it, then it's kind of all for nothing. So you want to make sure you have a finding system that can be in digital and paper. And Barbara, you're smiling, so you go right ahead and share what's on your mind.
Well, 2 things is one, that's why we call it a finding system and not a filing system. I mean, that's where this, because it's so easy to say, oh, just file it away. But the question is, can you find it? And then that, of course, leads to what we've begun calling Hemphill's principle, which is if you don't know you have it or you can't find it, it is of no value to you. And how many times when people are clearing up their clutter, whether it's their physical clutter, it's like, oh, I've been looking for this forever, or I didn't even know I had this, or whatever. So that's really critical. If you don't know you have it or you can't find it, it's of no value.
It's of no value to you.
Or we use the cost factor also, which is you can keep everything you want if you're willing to pay the price, which is time, space, money, and energy. And again, that doesn't have a moral value, but it really it's very different, but it really makes a difference in that answering that question.
Systems, not feelings. That's perfectly said. And then number 7. So for a long time, those were the 6. It was the 6 information management questions. And then we added number 7, which is kind of critical. How is it backed up? Right. So if you do put the systems in place and you're using various digital platforms, cloud things, then you want to make sure it's being backed up. So technology glitches, natural disasters. I mean, I live in Hurricane Alley. And I mean, gosh, even you do, Barbara. Some of our hurricanes go inland. Natural disasters, or even a spilled coffee can wipe out critical information. So what are you doing to make sure your things are backed up? So companies need a backup plan, and so do solopreneurs, because if you lose everything, there is no team to help rebuild. If you're by yourself, it's just you. So ask yourself these questions. If my laptop died today, what's at risk? Now, if I have an iPad, and if my iPad died today, I have minimal risk, because everything that I would do on my iPad is also in the cloud. So that is how I choose to back up things like that. On my phone, maybe I would lose some pictures that didn't get quite backed up today, but ask yourself that question. If you're keeping all of your files on your physical device and you lost that, that could, in the past, I did live like that. And then, we all get that little blue screen of death, and then that little round thing that spins and spins and spins. And you're like, oh my gosh, am I crashing? So you want to make sure that you have a plan. Okay. So what do I need backed up automatically? And what needs a second backup? Are there critical files that maybe need a backup of a backup? So think about that. And, of course, paper isn't immune either. Fires, floods, mold can destroy a business overnight. So think that through if you are keeping physical paper, physical documents, are any of those, not everything, but are any of those critical enough that you need an online backup in case of loss? So thoughts
I
on
have
that,
an
Barbara?
example of a friend, a dear friend of mine, who her phone just died. And she realized that the only photographs she had of her son, who died 4 years ago, were on that phone. So when you go back to what information do I need to keep, that's, a critical one.
Yes. Goodness. So next steps for you guys. Let me review those again. And Eds, if you'll put those up as I'm reviewing. I'm scrolling on my iPad in case you're wondering what I'm doing. Number one, what information do you need to keep? This is question number one. Number two, in what form? Number three, for how long? Number four, who is responsible for filing it? Number five, who needs access to it? Number six, how can you find it? Find it. Number seven, how is it backed up? Okay, so those are the 7 information management questions. Hopefully you've been taking notes. Jot those down and try to answer those questions for yourself. And if there's something you come across that you're stumped or you're not sure about, or you want help with the next steps to this process, reach out to us. You can visit us at lesscluttermorelife.com. There's a little short training video there. You can get introduced to us there. And we also have a scorecard if you'd like to test your level of productivity. How productive is your environment? You can go to productiveenvironmentscore.com and get the answer to that question. So again, if you guys have been around us long, you've heard the phrase, Barbara's famous quote, clutter is postponed decisions. So businesses, large and small, accumulate boxes, digital folders, and email archives full of unmade decisions. When companies try to clean it out, the people who created the clutter are often long gone, right? And when solopreneurs try to clean out, the person who created the clutter is still there, but tired and overworked. So either way, the solution is the same. Stop focusing on the past. As Barbara mentioned earlier, today's mail is tomorrow's pile. Build a simple system you can use today. You can start now by creating a system like the SOAR board that you can learn about at lesscluttermorelife.com that helps you make good decisions about the information that you receive every day. And I want to just post Nancy's little comment here. Thank you, Nancy. Great questions. Thank you. Nancy is one of our SOAR members, and she has spent, gosh, Nancy, has it been 2 years, year and a half, 2 years? She's been on a journey of decluttering and putting systems in place of decades of information. She was a business owner, lots of different things that she has dealt with, and she's taken it on like a champ and has made such tremendous progress. So proud of you, Nancy. And so guys, that's what we do. Almost 2 years, she said. Yeah, wow, almost 2 years. Amazing progress. So guys, this isn't stuff that's easy to do on your own. So we invite you to connect with us and let us help you. We have a group program that we all work together. It's not just training and listening and learning. It's actual implementation. It's doing the things in your space, in your workspace that need to be done. And we also have a team of certified productive environment specialists that can help you one-on-one individually as well. You don't have to do this alone. So Barbara, any closing thoughts as we wrap up today?
A couple of things. One is, one of the big reasons for doing this is to make sure that you're not wasting your time recreating what already exists. Mm-hmm. And part of this was really reinforced. I think it was 2 years ago, Adobe did a study that said for every 5 employees a company hires, only 4 are doing what they're paid to do, because the 5th one is looking for something in order to do what they're paid to do. Well, think about that in yourself. How often are you looking for a password, or looking for a form, or looking for an email you sent or something, instead of doing what it is? When I first presented this program idea to companies, they immediately thought that I was saying, And of course, employees were nervous. It's like, oh, that means they'll fire us. No, it means that employee, instead of recreating something, would be serving a customer or coming up with a new marketing plan or doing something that's really proactive. So it's about, as we always say, it's about accomplishing your work and enjoying your life.
Amen. And there goes Buddy. He's part of my productive environment. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you on the next one.